Howdy everyone, here's a lens that came completely out of left field from Canon, but has sparked lots of interest as soon as it was announced. It's the RF 16mm f2.8 STM, which is only for their full-frame mirrorless EOS R system cameras, not for digital SLRs. Its price is only £320 in the UK or $300 US, making it potentially a rare bargain from Canon. One of my favourite things in the world are small, inexpensive lenses, especially with ultra-wide angles and relatively bright apertures, and this one has it all. This could be a perfect option for someone on a low budget who wants a fun, small, easy-to-use ultra-wide lens to complement whatever general-purpose zoom lens came with their camera. A lightweight lens you can just throw in your bag for holidays or landscape photography trips. Nice, and the fairly bright maximum aperture of f2.8 makes it easier to shoot with indoors or even for some casual astrophotography. Let's look at the lens's body itself. One obvious place where Canon have saved some money in its production is by reusing the body design of their new RF mount Nifty 50 lens. It's plastic but feels fairly solid and is based on a metal lens mount with no weather sealing. It weighs only 165 grams. It's a fairly simple lens to handle. Just like its 50mm STM brother, it has a simple control ring at the front which turns incredibly smoothly and can be switched between changing focus manually or to control other functions such as aperture, exposure compensation or ISO levels. The way it works is slightly complex. When you're shooting in stills mode with autofocus on, then that control ring will only manually adjust your focus if you're half pressing the shutter button at the same time, which feels a little awkward, and even then, only if you've turned on lens electronic manual focus in the camera's menu system. Or you can set your camera to manual focus in the menus, and then the control ring will change focus for you whether your shutter button is pressed down or not, but it's a bit of a hassle to keep going into the menus to make the change. When used as a focus ring, it works responsively with the focus motor. As you can see here, the lens does suffer from relatively strong focus breathing, zooming in quite a bit as you focus more closely to your subject. That can help you a little if you're shooting close up to smaller objects, but it'll be annoying for some video makers who want to do big focus pulls, admittedly not commonly done when shooting with an ultra-wide lens though. As you can see, the lens autofocuses reasonably quickly and accurately, but with a quiet whining sound, and also the front element extends and retracts as it goes. If you're shooting video, then unless you set your camera to focus at the fastest speed setting, then the focus motor will slow down and become virtually silent. When you've set the focus ring to work as a control ring, then check out your options in the camera's custom function menu under customized dials, and you can set the control ring to change all kinds of things and select whether you want it to do so only when the shutter button is half pressed. Useful. On Canon's newest cameras like the EOS R5 or R6, when shooting video, you can also set your aperture in 1/8 increments, enabling you to change aperture very smoothly for video work. The lens does not feature image stabilization and it doesn't come with a hood, although Canon do sell one separately for $35. Its front filter size is a small 43mm. It's always useful to be able to attach filters to your ultra-wide angle lens, and I didn't find any problems with vignetting when using my favourite Marumi Fit and Slim 43mm circular polarizing filter. All in all, considering that this is one of Canon's lowest budget lenses, its build quality is perfectly acceptable. It works fine, although video makers should slow down their autofocus where possible and be ready to tolerate some focus breathing. Alright, image quality. I'm testing the lens here on a Canon EOS R5 with its full-frame 45MP sensor. In-camera corrections are turned on. At f2.8, in the middle of your image we see excellent picture quality, plenty of sharpness and contrast. Unfortunately, it's a different story in the image corners, which look hazy at f2.8 and fairly soft. Stop down to f4 and contrast improves in the corners, but not really sharpness. At f5.6, purple fringing on contrasting edges is reduced, and the lens stays this sharp until you stop down to f11, where a little softness begins to creep in due to the effect of diffraction. f16 and f22 get really soft. So it's a simple conclusion here. The lens's images look excellent in the middle of your pictures and noticeably weak in the corners, although they do improve a little if you stop down to f5.6. That's not what you hope to see on an ultra-wide-angle lens where corner image quality is important, but with this lens's small size and low price, you've got to expect compromises somewhere. Now let's look at distortion and vignetting. Worryingly, Canon doesn't allow you to turn distortion correction off here, which is never a good sign, so here are some results for you. Wow, on the left you can see uncorrected RAW images. That distortion is encroaching on fisheye lens territory here. On the right, you can see a JPEG image where only the distortion is corrected, not the vignetting. And it looks like the distortion has been slightly overcompensated for actually, as it's flipped into mild pincushion distortion there. Also, vignetting without corrections is very strong at f2.8, as you would expect. Stop down to f4 and the image corners look a bit brighter, but vignetting is still visible, and it doesn't go away any more than this as you stop down further. What crazy results! The lens is clearly relying on your camera correcting the living daylights out of your images, so obviously leave those corrections switched on. Now let's see about close-up image quality. The lens can focus down to an impressive 13 centimeters, fantastic for shooting smaller subjects. Straight from f2.8, close-up image quality is very sharp, and stop down to f4 for it to become excellent. Now let's see how this lens works against bright lights. It's a round of applause here. Bright lights never cause anything other than some very faint and rather small drops of flaring. That's important on an ultra-wide-angle lens, as the sun has a habit of making its way into your landscape shots. And while we're shooting in the dark, let's look at chroma levels. If you look carefully at this small light in the corner, you can see a touch of chroma smearing, but stop down to f4 and it quickly goes away. And let's take a look at sun stars while we're here. They only really begin to emerge once you stop down to f16, although at f22 they look quite nice and strong. When shooting with the aperture open and close to your subject, it's quite possible to get somewhat out of focus backgrounds with this lens. The good news is that this lens's bokeh is pretty pleasing to look at, nothing offensive going on here at all. And finally, related to bokeh, let's take a look at this lens's longitudinal chromatic aberration. Well, at f2.8 it's virtually nothing to worry about at all, as just about nothing. Stop down to f4 and any hints of colour on out of focus highlights are totally gone. So, the Canon RF 16mm f2.8 is a little mixed up, optically speaking. Its corner image quality is disappointing, possibly due to those corners being stretched so much by your camera to make up for its wild barrel distortion. But if you're not looking for critically sharp corner image quality, then you'll actually find this thing pretty delightful. It's always sharp in the middle of your images with very good contrast, a very close minimum focus distance, nice quality bokeh, and decent enough build quality. It'll be useful for video work too, although watch out for that focus breathing. But for $300, it's a perfect little lens to keep in your camera bag to complement whatever useful zoomable kit lens you shoot with. Its soft corner image quality means that I can't quite highly recommend it, no matter how much I kind of like this lens, but its low price does make its optical foibles quite forgivable in my book, so it does come recommended. Thanks for tuning in, and a special thanks to my Patreon subscribers for all their support. For $3 a month, supporters get access to all kinds of exclusive bonus content, so check it out in the description below. Ciao!